Hey everybody, so we've been correcting a lot of stuff, so I thought I'd buy everybody a drink. So this story is about the state of Massachusetts is thinking about enacting a hidden tax on all alcohol because apparently the legislature had forgotten about that time we dumped all the tea in the harbor. Okay, enough politicizing. So what our photographers did was they went out and they basically photographed a lot of booze. And we're going to put that together into a promo. Most of the stuff I've shown you guys how to correct so far has been people and wide shots of places. Color correcting stuff in close-ups, particularly product photography like this, is a whole art form in and of itself. When you shoot stuff this close up, the first thing you want to do is make sure you have a tripod. Close-ups with shaky footage, it's super annoying and it looks super bad in my humble opinion. So this shot, you can tell that glass is locked on. I'm looking at it and it looks kind of dark and there's no punch. Let's look at it on the scopes. That image could probably be a lot more saturated. And if you look, we've got some crushed blacks and it's not that bright. Now we have spikes here way at the top, which is probably these light reflections right here, right here. Some of these brights right here are from this liquid that's being poured in, and we can live with that. I mean, those are just not there. Those highlights, you're never going to get that back. You're never going to get that out of there either. So in the first node, I'm just going to see if I can brighten this up. I'm going to take the blacks up, and this is somebody's black t-shirt. The bartender probably had a black shirt on. And I'm looking here, little bit red. You can see a little bit of red in those blacks. So take that out a little bit. Bring it back down. Watch when I bring it back down. If you really look at it, you can see some of that red starting to creep back in. I'll take some of that out. Then I'll raise my gammas, see what that looks like. A little brighter. Raise my highlights, a little brighter. So that's where we came from. That's where we're at. First node, simple exposure node. I just wanted to see what I was working with there. Okay, so for the second node, I'm going to try to isolate this glass. Again, this shot really isn't moving, so we're not going to have to track anything. I'm going to draw a simple power curve here. Okay, maybe that curve wasn't so simple. So I've completed my curve. I'm going to go in here to this lemon. If you hold down the Alt key on PC, you can expand these curves out. So what I like to do is I'll draw the rough shape around it first, then I'll come in and really start to noodle around and get the shape looking much better. Okay, so that's my shape around my glass. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately make this really bright. And then I'm going to blur it because I want to see what happens to my blur. I've listed my gamma and my gain way up just to see what's going on. I'm going to soften it up, blur on the inside a little bit, blur on the outside a little bit. And I'm going to turn this off so I can see. So the reason why I brought this up so bright is usually when you draw a mask and you really start adjusting your gamma and your gain, you'll see kind of a halo effect. But because those blacks in the background are so dark, you really don't notice. So obviously that's a bit too bright. Let me turn that down. I'm going to brighten up that glass. I'm going to lift my gain up. I'm going to put my gamma up. Now I'm looking in this glass. And the glass, you've got some yellows in there, you've got some greens in there. It doesn't look very clean. So I'm going to come down here and under my hue versus saturation, I'm going to put yellow on there and bring the yellow down. Now you can see what it's doing to the glass. It's getting rid of all that discolorated yellow in there. See, it's kind of yellow, kind of green, kind of bleh. I can bring that down. Now, unfortunately, our lemon is yellow and it's looking a bit anemic. So even though our glass is no longer yellow, we've lost all the color in our lemon. So I'm going to go back in here into my power curves. I'm going to show you what it's cutting out. See, it's cutting out that glass. I'm going to draw a curve around this lemon. Okay, so I've drawn a shape around my lemon wedge, and I've drawn a shape around the martini glass. So what I have to do is subtract the lemon wedge from the martini glass. And let me show you what these controls do down here. I'm going to turn the lemon wedge off for a second to show you what's going on. So this mask is my martini mask. This button down here inverts the mask. So I've drawn the shape around my glass, and I can push that, and it's going to invert the shape. But I don't want that. I want that. What I can do then is, after I've drawn my shape around my lemon wedge, boop, what I can do is push this button, which turns it into a matte, which will subtract it from the martini glass, like so. Little confusing, and I will admit this takes me a little while to get. I got to mash around these buttons a little bit. So I can come down here, and I can then look at my picture. So my glass is now less yellow, and my lemon wedge has not been affected. Now what I can do is I can add another node right here, and I can come in and I can grab that lemon wedge. I'm going to select it here, and I'm going to come up here and hit copy window. Go to this node here and then hit paste window. Now I've got a window around my lemon wedge. I'm going to come in, make it a little bit better. Watching me rotoscope, that's some riveting television. Okay, so I've drawn a shape around my lemon. I'm going to blur it out a little bit. And now what I can do is increase the gain. When I copied the power window, it still had this mask option on, so I turned that off, and there we go. So I can adjust my gain, a little high, and my gamma. I'm just brightening it up. I'm going to saturate it. And now we've got one punchy lemon. So whenever you do a mask like this, you always want to play it down and take a look at it. So this shot isn't moving, which is definitely going to help us a lot. But if I look, we got some funkiness around that lemon. You can see here and here. So this is coming from the second node. So if we look on the second node and I go through my masks, I'm going to turn off the martini glass. So I did not blur out this mask, which is why we're getting these hard edges. I'm going to work on this matte for a little bit. Now I'm going to blur it out. I'm going to turn the martini back on so I get the proper shape around this. And let's see what we got. That's better. So again, very important to feather those masks. So the harsh edge is now gone. My lemon is very lemon and my drink is not very lemony. Remember, the whole point of the second node was to get the yellow out of that picture. So now I have a complete shot here, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, you know what, it probably could get a bit more saturated. So let's add another node. So I'm going to crank up my saturation, and I'm also going to go into my curves and see if I can give this shot some more contrast. So I'm going to crunch down the blacks, which is nice because we're losing all that background stuff, and let's see if I can bring up some highlights, which I can. Now I'm doing that, and I'm looking at my red drink, losing some detail. That red drink probably a little too oversaturated. I'm going to come in and go hue versus sat. Now normally I would never move the red because that really affects people's skin tones, but the only skin tone here is this guy's arm. So I'm going to bring the red down a little bit, and you can see I'm getting some detail back in my drink. That's what we were at. Not so good, a little too red, losing some detail. Drop down that saturation a little bit. You can look here where it is in the scope. So that's what I corrected it to. See the reds poking out of that box? Even in high definition, I tried not to saturate reds too much because they still tend to tear, I believe, even with high def. I would never push a red this far. I would push yellows that far, or blues, or greens. Reds, magentas, even cyan I would push, but reds and magentas up here I don't like to push because it still looks a little weird on air. Drop that red down a little bit, get some detail back. If you look in the scopes, it's out of that box. It's looking pretty good. So I'm looking at this shot again, and I really don't care about this dude behind him. Let me play it down. It's kind of distracting. I really wish he wasn't there at all. I wish it was just a black background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to node 2. I am going to select my martini node. I'm going to select this mask, and I'm going to copy it. Copy window. Come here, add another node. I'm going to paste it. Paste window. So I've got my martini glass here. And what I'm going to do is add outside node up here. This color corrector will affect inside the glass, and this color corrector affects what's outside of the glass because it's inverted. That's what the add outside node does. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to bring down my lift and my gamma. Now I also notice there's some green on the bartender's shirt here. I don't know what that is. It's driving me nuts. Let's see if we can get rid of it. Hue versus sat. I'm going to pick right here, right about there. Bring that down. And you can see it's gotten rid of it. Now what I've noticed is it tends to pick it a little too tight. So these 2 points down here are a little too close together. And I've noticed that when I do this and bring it all the way down, sometimes you'll have artifacting around the edges here, and sometimes it's just simply not wide enough to get rid of all the color you're looking to get rid of. So I'll sometimes just pull these curves out. You got to be careful because you could do this and that'll mess you all up. But I'm going to make them a little wider, all right? That selection's going to be a little more generous in the amount of green it's selecting. I don't want to go too much into the yellow because it's going to start to affect my lemon wedge. But if we take a look, before, very green, now not so green. I'm going to play it back to make sure we're kosher. And we are. No artifacting, no weirdness, and it zapped that green out of that picture quite nicely. I've also definitely darkened the background, so if you turn that node off and on, I've definitely darkened it. Let's get rid of this red arm. I don't know what that is. That's pretty distracting. Right in there, flesh tone's right where I thought it would be. All right, I'll make him an alien. Let's delete this point and see what happens. There we go. A little more human-looking arm. See, very red. Looks weird. Not so red. So we've done a lot to this picture. When you shoot close-ups like this, particularly a product photography like this, you end up doing a lot of these things. A lot of masking, a lot of pulling colors out, a lot of saturating stuff. So we came from that, not so inspiring, not so interesting, to that. So now I'm looking at this lemon here, and we've got some orange in there. I don't know how that got in there. So I'm going to come down to my controls here and do a hue versus hue. So this is what I mean when sometimes the selection isn't wide enough. See what it's doing there? It's not really grabbing as much yellow as I would like. So sometimes you can come in and just push the color you want, yellow. Wouldn't want that, but you get the picture. It's selecting more of that yellow. Let's see if you can push that more towards yellow. So my lemon is now a little bit more lemony, more yellow. Certainly better than that, and that was photographed. Now, as you can see down here, it didn't take much. It's just a slight adjustment from here, which is kind of orangey, down to there. A little more yellowy. Yellow is one of those colors, it'll run away on you pretty quick. Yellow can very easily turn a pukey shade of green like that, or get very orangey like that. You know what, now that I'm looking at it, it's probably too saturated. This is part of the process when you color correct. You gotta look, stop, come back. Hue versus set. Can I bring some yellow out of that? There we go. There's our corrected drink. Now let's take a look at another shot for this promo. This is our beer close-up here. Let me play it down. Let's see what it looks like on the scopes. This shot is a bit overexposed. You can see here the highlights too high. Before I can start dealing with any of the color, I want to see if I can bring the highlights down. There's not a lot of detail right here. So in the first note, I just brought the lift, gamma, and gain. I brought them all down. And if you look, this is the original shot. This is what I corrected. We've got some detail back in the whites, some detail back in this yellow right here. Not much, didn't need much, but look at the scopes. That's what was shot. You can see all that pinned up there, and that's what I corrected it to. This white here, this spike, is probably this stuff right here. And this wave right here is probably this red part right here. Now this goes back to what I just said about yellow, is yellow can run away on you pretty quickly. I'm looking down here on the scopes. We're kind of green here, and I fixed that with this node. You can see what's happening. We're yellowy green right there, and we're swinging that back to red. It's more of an amber color. There's no more green in there. I took some of the yellow out, and I did that by hue versus hue. So as you can see, this is a very, very, very slight adjustment. I'm just going to clear this node out and watch the scopes. All right. Yellowy, greeny, kind of nasty. I'm going to hit undo. And our beer has gone much more ambery. That's good. Did a little curve adjustment here. Let me reset that. I brought the blacks down, and I brought the midtones down, and I brought the highlights down. And by bringing down the highlights, look at this portion right here. By bringing the highlights, that's where they were. By bringing the highlights down, we get a little bit more detail back into our shot. And same thing with adjusting the midtones. Just a little bit more detail in. So we came from this, overexposed, a bit too yellowy greeny, loss of detail, to this. So I hope this helped you guys. As usual, I will put the promo at the end. And happy correcting, everybody.
Beer, wine, and liquor costing you more? It could happen in Massachusetts.
It's ridiculous.
This is bananas.
25 Investigates exposes a push for a hidden tax increase.
Is this a money grab by the state?
Why the state wants you to pay up. Tonight on Boston 25 News at 10.